For years, the loudest voice in my life wasn't my boss, my parents, or even my friends. It was the one inside my own head. And let me tell you, it was relentless. That voice told me I wasn't working hard enough, that any success I had was just a fluke, and that every failure was proof I was never going to be enough. I honestly thought that voice, this brutal inner critic, was my secret weapon. I thought it was the thing that pushed me to achieve, to keep moving forward. Turns out it was the architect of my own misery. It wasn't motivating me. It was pushing me toward burnout so complete I barely recognized myself. I knew something had to change, drastically. So for 30 days, I did the one thing that felt completely unnatural. I tried to be kind to myself. For most of my adult life, I lived by an unspoken rule. Be hard on yourself, or fall behind. That was my engine, my identity. I believed the only thing standing between me and failure was the fear of my own judgment. And I know I'm not alone in that belief. It's kind of the silent anthem of hustle culture, isn't it? We wear busy like a badge of honor, and self-criticism, we treat it like a necessary tool for growth. I wasn't just a participant in that mindset. I was a full-blown believer. From the outside, everything looked fine. So I was hitting my goals, moving up in my career, juggling everything life could throw at me. But on the inside, it was a completely different story. The pressure never stopped. My mind felt like a courtroom, one where I was always on trial, and the verdict, always guilty. A tiny mistake at work would spiral into a sleepless night, replaying the error over and over again. A minor awkward moment in conversation would echo for days, convincing me I was unlikable. This wasn't just psychological, it was physical too. I was living in a constant low-grade state of anxiety. My shoulders were always tight. My sleep was broken. And I felt a bone-deep exhaustion that coffee couldn't fix. And you know what? Science backs this up. Harsh self-criticism has been linked to anxiety, depression, and chronic stress. My inner critic wasn't just hurting my feelings, it was keeping my body in a near-constant state of emergency. I started to think this was just who I was. I guess I'm just a stressed person, I'd say. I'm just an anxious person. Joy was slowly leaking out of my life. Every moment felt gray, dull, and loaded with obligation. Achievements didn't feel like victories, because the second I hit a goal, my critic just moved the goalpost. There was no good enough. Just what's next. And don't mess it up. I was on a hamster wheel, running faster and faster. Not to get anywhere, but because I was terrified of what would happen if I stopped. I was burnt out, I was miserable, and something had to give. The breaking point didn't come in a dramatic explosion. It was more like a quiet, terrifying implosion. I was working on a project I'd poured my heart into. It wasn't perfect, but it was good. Then, I got some feedback. Not even harsh, just constructive. But to my inner critic, it was everything. It didn't say, "You made a mistake." It said, "You are a mistake. You're an imposter. You will never be good enough." That night, I couldn't work. I couldn't relax. Couldn't even talk to anyone. I just sat there, hollowed out by the weight of my own thoughts. And in that silence, something shifted. For the first time, I really saw that voice for what it was. Not a motivator, a bully. My biggest driver was also my biggest source of pain. It wasn't pushing me forward, it was punishing me for being human. That was the moment I found self-compassion, or rather it found me. Through a podcast, a random video, and eventually, the work of Dr. Kristen Neff, I began hearing about this practice called self-compassion. My first thought, cynicism. Self-compassion? I thought, sounds like an excuse to slack off. My inner critic laughed. Give yourself a break, that's how you fail. But the path I was on was clearly not working. I was desperate, so I made a deal with myself. I'd run an experiment. For 30 days, I'd shut down my cynicism. I would practice self-compassion, treat it like a mental training program. If it turned me into a lazy mess, fine, the critic wins. But if anything got better, I had to find out. It felt like stepping into unfamiliar, even dangerous territory. But it also felt like the leap I had to take. Going into the 30-day challenge, I knew that just be nice to yourself wasn't going to cut it. My brain is way too clever. It would find every loophole, so I created structure. Clear, daily rules. A protocol I could follow, even when it felt hard. The first rule was something I called the friend test. Every time I caught myself spiraling after a mistake, I had to stop and ask, what would I say to a good friend if they were in this exact situation? Because let's be honest, if a friend forgot a meeting or sent the wrong file, I wouldn't say, wow, you're a total failure. So why was it okay to say that to myself? The rule was simple. Whatever kind, supportive thing I'd say to a friend, I had to say that exact thing to me. Second, I started a daily compassion journal, not a diary. Got just one thing I struggled with that day, and a paragraph of kind, understanding words written back to myself. Alongside that, I had to write down one thing I handled well, even if it was small. The idea was to retrain my brain to stop obsessing over the negative. The third rule was what I called the mindful pause. When I felt overwhelmed, anxious, or triggered, I had to literally stop, put my hands over my heart, and take 3 deep breaths. And in that moment, I would say, this is a moment of suffering. Suffering is part of being human. May I be kind to myself in this moment? That tiny break became my pattern interrupt. And the final rule? The reframe. Every time I caught myself using words like stupid, lazy, or failure, I had to challenge it. So instead of saying, I'm so stupid for forgetting that, I would stop and say, I made a mistake because I have a lot on my plate. It's okay, I can fix this. These were my 4 rules. I wrote them on a sticky note and stuck it to my monitor. Day 1, I stared at them and thought, this is either going to change my life or feel totally ridiculous. Honestly, it was both. The first week was incredibly awkward. Trying to be kind to myself felt like writing with the wrong hand. Clumsy, unnatural. The first time I made a mistake and tried the friend test, my inner critic immediately shot back, oh, how convenient a free pass for being mediocre. The new voice? The compassionate one? It was a whisper. The old voice had a megaphone. The compassion journal wasn't any easier. The first few nights I just stared at the page. Listing what went wrong? It's easy. But thinking of something I did well? My brain would go completely blank. I'm writing kind words to myself. It felt like I was lying, or worse, being narcissistic. But somewhere in week 2, something shifted. It's not a lightning bolt. More like a change in weather. Everything still felt weird, but a little less weird. The reframes came a little faster. The kind voice didn't sound as foreign. I'd still have the automatic reaction. I'm an idiot. But now, the counter voice, you're human. Your learning would show up just a few seconds later. It wasn't effortless. It was effortful, but I was making the effort. That mattered. Near the end of week 2, I had a moment I'll never forget. I got an email that was slightly critical of my work, something that normally would wrecked my afternoon. My stomach tightened. The anxiety kicked in, but almost automatically I paused. I put my hand on my heart. I took a deep breath. This is a moment of suffering. May I be kind to myself? I read the email again. Objectively this time, I made the correction. I moved on. The emotional hurricane became a passing rain shower. The rest of my day wasn't ruined. That moment felt like proof. This wasn't just fluffy talk. It was working. It was real. It was the first flicker of hope that I was in stuck being my own worst enemy forever. Just as I was starting to find my rhythm, the universe decided to throw me a final exam. A real test. In the middle of week 3, I made a major mistake at work. It was public. It was high stakes. It was humiliating. For my inner critic, this was a dream come true. The ultimate I told you so. And it came back with a vengeance. Louder, meaner, stronger. It didn't just say, you messed up, it screamed. This is what happens when you get soft. This self-compassion stuff is a joke. You've proven you can't be trusted. The shame hit like a wave, and honestly, it felt easier to let it drown me. For a full day, I gave in. I skipped the journal. I didn't reframe anything. I let the critic take over completely. I replayed every second of the mistake. I beat myself up in ways I wouldn't wish on anyone. It felt like everything I'd built over the past 2 weeks had crumbled. Like I was right back where I started. But the next morning, something surprising happened. I woke up with a kind of emotional hangover, raw, heavy, exhausted. And I looked at that sticky note still stuck to my monitor, the one with my 4 rules. And I felt a flicker of defiance, a whisper that said, you've been here before. you know where that road goes. I realized I had a choice. I could give up, go back to the critic, the burnout, the self-doubt, or I could use the very tools I'd been practicing right here in the hardest moment. So I sat down not to fix the mistake, but to write. Not a work email, not a journal entry. A letter, a compassionate letter, written to myself, as if I were my own best friend. I wrote, "You're disappointed. You're embarrassed. That's okay. This hurts, and it makes sense that it hurts. You worked hard. You care deeply. And one mistake doesn't erase your value." As I wrote, the tears came. Not from weakness, but from release. It was like I was finally letting go of years of punishment. Years of feeling like I wasn't allowed to be human. This wasn't about pretending everything was fine. It was about facing what happened without self-destruction. This was the turning point. The critic still had its opinions, but it no longer had full control. It had proven that even in the worst moment, I could choose kindness. I had proven that self-compassion wasn't just for the easy days. It was for the days when it hurt the most. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel broken. I felt brave. After surviving week 3, something shifted deep inside me. It wasn't a lightning bolt, more like the quiet click of a door unlocking from the inside. My inner critic didn't disappear, but its microphone had been unplugged. It was still there grumbling in the corner, but the voice I'd been practicing for weeks, it had taken the podium. By week 4, things felt different, calmer. The friend test became second nature. I didn't have to force it. It was starting to feel automatic. The compassion journal, once a nightly struggle, started to feel like a moment of peace, a reset, a space to breathe. And the results, honestly, they shocked me. For the first time in years, I was sleeping through the night. No more 3 a.m. panic loops replaying every awkward conversation from the past 5 years. The background anxiety I used to carry around like a second skinnet started to fade. The hum got quieter. I started smiling more, not performative smiles, real ones. Moments of peace that didn't feel borrowed. And this wasn't some placebo effect. Research shows that self-compassion literally rewires the brain. It lowers cortisol. It boosts optimism. And I was living proof. But the most surprising breakthrough was around motivation. See, I used to believe that self-criticism was what drove me. I thought being my own worst enemy was the only way to succeed. I was terrified that being kind to myself would make me lazy, complacent, mediocre. But it was the opposite, because I wasn't terrified of punishment anymore. I was more willing to take healthy risks. I spoke up in a meeting when I normally would have stayed silent. I volunteered for a tough project I would have avoided out of fear. I wasn't playing it safe. I was playing it real. I realized that self-criticism runs on fear, but self-compassion, it runs on care. And fear burns out. Care lasts. Self-compassion created the safety I needed to be brave, to fail forward, to get back up without tearing myself down. It didn't make me weaker. It made me resilient. It didn't let me off the hook. It gave me something to hold on to. That was the real reward. Not perfection, but peace. And the power to try again without fear. The 30 days were up. The experiment was technically over. But something told me wasn't going back. Looking at myself a month ago felt like looking at someone else. Before me was brittle, always on edge, always proving. Back then, I thought self-judgment was keeping me sharp. But all it really did was keep me afraid. I was running on fumes, convinced I was never enough. Trapped in a loop where every success evaporated the second I reached it. The after me still makes mistakes, still feels stress. But now, my first reaction isn't to spiral. It's to pause, to breathe, and to ask, what would I say to someone I love? That tiny pause changed everything. Because now, when I stumble, I don't shatter. I respond like an ally, not an enemy. And that's what emotional resilience is. It's not the absence of struggle, but the presence of support, especially from yourself. What shocked me most was how this internal shift started to ripple outward. I didn't expect my relationships to change, but they did. The less harsh I was with myself, the more patience I had for others. The more grace I gave myself, the more freely I could give it away. Turns out, when you stop judging yourself every second, you stop judging everyone else too. The inner war quieted, and in its place, something softer grew. This journey also helped me see the difference between self-esteem and self-compassion. Two things I used to confuse. Self-esteem is performance-based, it's conditional. You only feel worthy when you succeed. But self-compassion, it's unconditional. It's what shows up when you fall flat. It's not about telling yourself you're amazing. It's about not kicking yourself when you're down. It's not about pretending everything's fine. It's about saying, even now, even here, I still deserve kindness. That's the shift. That's the magic. So what's the big lesson after 30 days of self-compassion? It's this. Being hard on yourself doesn't make you stronger. It just makes you suffer more. We've been sold the idea that self-criticism is a virtue, that it keeps us sharp, motivated, accountable. But in reality, it breaks us down, quietly, slowly, relentlessly. Real strength doesn't come from the voice that tears you apart. It comes from learning how to be your own ally. It comes from meeting failure, not with shame, but with curiosity, with grace, with a willingness to try again. And here's the beautiful part. You don't have to start with some big 30-day challenge. Self-compassion is built in tiny, ordinary moments. So if this video speaks to you, if you're feeling stuck, brittle, or just plain tired, let me leave you with a single, simple practice. Tonight, try the friend test. Think of one thing you struggled with today. It's just one. Then ask yourself, what would I say to my best friend if they told me this? And see if you can offer even just a sliver of that kindness to yourself. That's it. Okay, that's the first step. And it's more than enough. This experiment didn't just give me better sleep or fewer anxiety spirals. It changed the tone of my entire inner world. From one of conflict to one of care. And that's a change I plan to keep making, one kind thought at a time. Hey, thanks for listening.